It's been a long time, Eugene, since we caught up, and plenty to talk about. 3.5 weeks you've been away.
Yeah, approximately 3.5 weeks, which is, in today's environment, it's pretty good. I got a voucher to come back straight away.
We'll go to what happened on the trip over there, and first up, Carlos. Can you tell us what you took out of Carlos's fight?
Yeah, I mean, Carlos did what Carlos does. A little bit of inexperience played a big part in his fight, and he kind of basically he expended too much energy trying to finish the guy out of there when he got the guy in trouble. And at this level, you have to methodically go about your business, not just try and get someone out of there. At this level, guys know how to come back from when they're hurt, and guys know how to, a shot that worked previously, 10 seconds later that same shot won't work. You have to be a lot more methodical and calculated about the way you take someone out, and you always have to be mindful of your energy. And a little bit of inexperience played a part there, and he basically expended too much energy trying to get the guy out of there, and then had nothing for the rest of the fight. Yeah.
He was a tough man he's up against, and it shows that Carlos has got the power to hurt those big guys.
Yeah, and he was a great opponent. He was a perfect opponent for us. He was the perfect opponent. Like, this is what people don't understand. Like, I could have, I'm trying to make champions. So I picked the guys that will get us to that position. That guy wasn't the easiest fight, but that wasn't what I was after. Carlos is a very small light heavyweight, and he needs to fight and get used to fighting people much bigger than him. That was my kind of main, that was the main thinking behind me choosing such a big, huge man. Is that at the end of the day, for us to win this bout, we're going to have to get used to fighting very big, huge men like that. And it was with that in mind, with the future in mind, that these decisions are made. And the opponent was a perfect opponent for us, for Carlos's development. And the fight ended up being great for Carlos's development. But he lost, and all credit goes to Kennedy, I think his name, Kennedy. He did a great job.
I know how hard Kai had worked for this fight that he was in, and everything seemed to work for him, and he looked really good.
Yeah, some things worked for him. Like, one of the bigger emphases that we put on this fight was for Kai. We felt Kai was going to be great in all sorts of positions. The one position we felt he couldn't be, and the one position I reminded him several times backstage to not be in, was with that guy on your back. And then within the first 30 seconds, Kai made a drastic mistake and ended up with the guy on the back. Which is, sometimes it's a bit of irony, that's just how the world works. We spent the whole camp trying not to let the guy to our back. I would have reminded him, 40 seconds before the fight, don't give up your back, and then he gave up his back straight away. But we put a lot of time into practicing being in these worst case scenarios, and he fought back from a very bad position and ended up getting the win. Yeah.
And then, of course, Israel and Jan.
Yeah, and again, like, wasn't Israel's best performance, but it wasn't his worst either. We felt there was some terrible judging in that fight for a start. Some actual terrible judging. We don't have a problem with the decision. We definitely have a problem with some of the way the judges scored it. But in our mind, 2-2, and we needed to take that last round. And Israel got taken down and controlled on the ground for most of that round, so you can't give Israel that round. Although Jan didn't do any damage, definitely not enough damage to warrant a 10-8. Although Jan didn't do any significant damage at all, he was able to control and hold Israel on the ground to give him that round and essentially give him the fight in our mind. He ended up winning the fight by a bigger margin, but that was just because of some crazy judging. So, yeah, I mean, we were close.
Yeah, I thought
We were close. We were so close to pulling off something monumental. But alas, close is not good enough in this sport.
Do you think he fought different than he had? He gave Israel a lot of respect, and some of the things that I thought he would have done against other opponents he didn't do. He held back.
Yeah, look, we definitely trained for Jan to be way more aggressive than that, and Jan kind of sat back a little bit better, and counter was, on the counter fighting a lot more than we expected him to be, and he was tough when he was counter fighting. Like he would come back and answer everything that Israel did, regardless. Israel would draw a counter out, and Jan would counter hard. Even if he got hit, he would bite through it and get hit. Like he had a great game plan. But we were prepared for that. That's not an excuse. We were leaning on the side that Jan would be a lot more aggressive, but we were prepared for him to stand back and take his time a little bit as well.
Well, that was your trip over, and you were coming back, but there was still plenty happening, and everybody was shocked when Brad's fight was called off. Can you tell us what led up to it and just exactly what happened?
Yeah, I mean, basically, members of our team contracted COVID, and that put a halt to that fight. Brad himself didn't contract COVID. It was other members of the team. And then eventually, some of the key coaches ended up contracting COVID, and then Volko ended up contracting COVID. And thankfully, Shane and then Jamie Malaki, the Aussie boy, managed to test negative, and we managed to get some coaches around him that were tested negative as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's just... It's an unfortunate thing. We had one member of our team the previous trip to Dubai who unfortunately contracted COVID, and he wasn't allowed in to the bubble. So, when you're in these countries that basically aren't New Zealand, you run the risk. You run a risk. You're running the gauntlet, and we weren't successful in evading that. We weren't successful in that gauntlet this time. Some of us got caught.
Follow the bubble back and follow a chain and know where it come from, where it was contracted and things like that? Or?
It's not, no. We have our suspicions, but at the end of the day, they're just suspicions. And the UFC do a great job. They put everything in place, but the fact of the matter is, you cannot plug up every single hole in an environment where COVID is everywhere. It's impossible. It's impossible. At the end of the day, we still had to catch public flights, go through public airports, take public transport. There's the UFC can only do so much, and what they did was second to none. They put you in this bubble. But there's certain points that it's impossible to completely kind of cover all the areas. It's just not possible. You just have to be as diligent as you can and hope that you don't get COVID. But the opportunities to accidentally contract COVID are, you're running the gauntlet. You just have to do your best. And unfortunately, in this situation, just like in Dubai, we had one member that got it, and this time we had a few more. And it's just, we can't have done anything more to try and prevent that.
Can you just tell us where everybody is now? Because who come back with you? Who's still there? Who is Brad going to stay over there and fight? There's been so many rumours flying around New Zealand that.
No. Brad's on his way home in a day or two. Volko's going to be a little bit longer. His coach Joe Lopez is coming back in a day or two. Jamie Malaki and the Aussie boys are on their way back. Mike's another week away. Shane and Brad are on their way back in a couple of days. So everybody's on their way back. We just want to get everybody home. It's been a hell of a trip. Some guys fighting, some guys not fighting. Not all the results went our way. It's time for us to come back and just settle down and get back in the four walls of the gym and regroup and get back to work and put all the madness behind us. The COVID thing is just one of those things, and that's what's going to happen, unfortunately. The thing is, the Americans have all had it. It went right through their gyms and stuff. We went through this period where a lot of Americans were pulling out left, right, and centre. Sometimes 4 fights in a night were pulling out. COVID has ran right through America now. The American teams have got it. They've all had it. All the American fighters have had it. They're immune. Well, they have it. They have antibodies that go a long way in stopping them from getting it again. The teams that are now going to suffer now are the teams that are coming from countries like ours, who've never contracted COVID before. They don't have any antibodies. They don't have any immunity. The teams coming from around the world from these safe countries that have never had it, they're going to go through their period of having to be responsible for not getting COVID and not being able to fight. You will no longer see the Americans pulling out. Most of them have already had it. It's going to be teams like ours and stuff, and it's just going to take a while to get on top of it.
With all that in mind, when do you think that Brad and Dan, who fought earlier, and you've got anything planned or aiming at any specific dates or times?
Because of the nature of what happened and stuff, I have no idea. This is one of the few times where a lot of the guys have finished their fight, and I'm not sure what the next step is in terms of a date. It's going to be a while, because I think it takes a while to come back from COVID, depending on the severity of how sick you got. Volk has to get himself back to full health. Shane needs some time, and Shane and Carlos, they need a bit of time to work on a few things. I'm not sure. This is probably the least definitive I can be ever about just what's going to happen with dates and stuff.
Is there a time limit on when Israel has to defend the middleweight title? Or?
No, not necessarily. First of all, a number one contender has to come through. There's a bit of a tournament going on right now between the 4 guys. And out of that, one of those guys will put up their hand, and then that'll be who we're fighting next. So that's something that Israel's really, really looking forward to. So, he knows that this is his division. He went up there and threw the dice and tried to do something great, come up a little bit short, but at the end of the day, he's still a champion of a division, so he has to come back and reign. Yeah.
Thanks for that, mate. Move on to something else now, because you got back and you didn't let the dust settle under your feet. You're out of quarantine and straight over to the North Shore to Shuriken, and big night over there.
Yeah, you gotta love Jason Worcester and the Shuriken show. You gotta love that show. I love it every time I got there. It's such a massive opportunity for not just my guys, but for just young men that want to get into the sport and want to start somewhere. Where do they, where do we start? Well, it starts in the gym, but then they need to reward themselves for all their hard work in the gym. And you do that in places and shows like Jason Vorster's show Shuriken. So, yeah, it was a fantastic night, a great night of fights. Yeah.
15 fights and only one went the distance, I think. Yeah. Good wins by Kevin Jusset, who was having his first fight for a long, long time.
Yeah, it was good to get Kevin off the ground. He's obviously, because of COVID and stuff, he hasn't fought for a long time, so it was good. He had a really game opponent, Paul McMahon, so that was a good fight. Kevin managed to finish that early. And then, who else we had? Lawrence probably had his last amateur fight. He'll probably be fighting as a professional in his next fight. Jason got caught by a young up-and-coming fighter. Sorry, I don't remember your name, but a really good opponent. And Mijio had a really excellent fight as well. So I'm pleased with all of those guys. Yeah, I'm pleased with all of those guys.
And then on to King in the Ring the following night, and Blood Diamond takes away a world title.
Yeah, which is a fantastic way to kind of cap off his kickboxing career, because he's obviously, his heart's pretty set on MMA now. So to finish with over 100 kickboxing fights and a world title, it's a pretty pleasing way to finish. If he does go full-time into MMA, he might take some kickboxing fights, but that seems to me like a pretty good way to cap off a pretty darn good kickboxing career. Yeah.
Hey, thanks very much for the catch up, the first day back at work, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.